decide whether Chief Charlie Beck will be the city's top cop. But first, we're going to go to that news conference in Marin County and listen into the Sheriff's Department.
First off, I would like to extend the condolences of the Sheriff's Office to the Williams family before we begin. I have a prepared statement, and I ask that you will hold your questions until the end of our statement. My last name is spelled B-O-Y-D. On August 11th, 2014, at approximately 11:55 a.m., Marin County Communications received a 911 telephone call reporting that a male adult had been located unconscious and not breathing inside his residence located at 95 St. Thomas Way in unincorporated Tiburon, California. The caller was distraught and indicated at that time that was an apparent suicide due to a hanging had taken place and that rigor mortis had set in. The Sheriff's Office, as well as representatives of the Tiburon Fire Department and Southern Marin Fire Protection District, were dispatched to the incident with emergency personnel arriving on scene at 12 p.m. The male subject, who was pronounced deceased by firefighters from the Tiburon Fire Department at 12:02 p.m., has been identified as Robin McLaurin Williams, a 63-year-old resident of unincorporated Tiburon, California. Preliminary information developed during the investigation by Coroner Division personnel has revealed Mr. Williams had been seeking treatment for depression. Mr. Williams was last seen alive by his wife at approximately 10:30 p.m. on August 10th, 2014, when she retired for the evening in a room in the home. It is unknown at this time when Mr. Williams retired for the evening in a bedroom in his home. At approximately 10:30 a.m. on August 11, 2014, Mr. Williams' wife left the home, believing Mr. Williams to still be asleep. Mr. Williams' personal assistant became concerned at approximately 11:45 a.m. when he failed to respond to knocks on his bedroom door. At that time, the personal assistant was able to gain access to Mr. Williams' bedroom and entered the bedroom to find Mr. Williams clothed in a seated position, unresponsive, with a belt secured around his neck, with the other end of the belt wedged between the closed closet door and the door frame. His right shoulder area was touching the door, with his body perpendicular to the door and slightly suspended. Mr. Williams, at that time, was cool to the touch, with rigor mortis present in his body and liver mortis positioned appropriately for the position he was located in. The inside of Mr. Williams' left wrist had several acute superficial transverse cuts. A pocket knife with a closed blade was located in close proximity to Mr. Williams. The pocket knife was examined and a dry red material was located on the blade of the knife, which appeared consistent to dried blood. It is unknown at this time if the dried red material is in fact blood or if it is Mr. Williams' blood, but scientific testing will be conducted to evaluate its investigative value. Mr. Williams was transported from the scene to the Napa County Sheriff's Office morgue by the Coroner Division pending a forensic examination, which was conducted this morning prior to this press conference. The forensic examination, conducted by Dr. Joseph Cohen, who is the Sheriff's Office for Marin County's chief forensic pathologist, did not reveal any injuries indicating Mr. Williams had been in a struggle or a physical altercation prior to him being located deceased. The preliminary, and I again say preliminary, results of the forensic examination revealed supporting physical signs that Mr. Williams' life ended from asphyxia due to hanging. Toxicology testing will be conducted to determine if Mr. Williams had any chemical substances in his system at the time of his death. Toxicology results will not be available for approximately 2 to 6 weeks while the testing is being performed. Please note that this is an active investigation into the cause, manner, and circumstances of Mr. Williams' death. The work of the coroner's office is not complete at this time. The final cause and manner of death will not be certified until the conclusion of the investigation, which is several weeks away. When the investigation is concluded and our final results are ready for dissemination, a press conference will be scheduled at that time. Additionally, I have received numerous requests for copies of 911 and dispatch recordings as well as investigative reports. Please note each request will be handled in accordance with Public Record Act guidelines with responses provided to those who have submitted them within 10 days. Media inquiries should be continued to be directed to me, Lieutenant Keith Boyd, via my email at kboyd, which is spelled K-B-O-Y-D, at marinsheriff.org, MARINSHERIFF.org. I will respond to these inquiries, time permitting, as I receive them. Please keep in mind at this time the Coroner's Division is also investigating active cases from other residents of this community. So I will respond to your inquiries, time permitting. Okay, that concludes my written statement at this time, and I will open up to take a few questions, understanding that this is an active investigation and there is some information that will be withheld until the final press conference in several weeks.
Based on the fact that there was rigor mortis, that it set in, does that give you more of an idea, a timeline of when this incident may have taken place?
Rigor mortis is a sign that will be evaluated in conjunction with the livor mortis, lividity, to try to correlate a time period that the death may have occurred. Understanding that there is no perfect environment when you're talking about scientific studies in lividity and rigor mortis, so we will use known facts to kind of try to surmise when the death may have occurred.
Lieutenant, was there any indication he left a note? Was there a note?
We're not discussing the note or a note at this point, as the investigation is ongoing, and that information will be discussed at a future time at the concluding press conference.
Were there any signs within the home of drug or alcohol use?
The investigation is ongoing. Toxicology testing will be conducted to determine if any chemical substances were in Mr. Williams' system at the time of his death, and at that time we'll have a determination as to whether or not there were any signs that he may have been under the influence or incapacitated by any other substance.
He was seated at the time, is that correct? Seated at that time?
He was slightly suspended in a seated position. A copy of this transcript of this statement will be posted on the Sheriff's Office press page at the conclusion of this press conference, so that way you have a copy of it. Lividity is the pooling of human blood through to gravity. So when you pass, your blood is no longer flowing through your remains. What happens is it stops flowing and it starts to pool due to gravity and settle. There are signs and studies that indicate after a certain period of time when that settling is locked in. During early stages, lividity can be adjusted if remains are moved or not removed. The lividity in Mr. Williams was consistent to the position he was found in.
Was this his first suicide? Were they sleeping in separate bedrooms?
We're not going into that part of the investigation. What I will say is that she retired to bed. Mr. Williams' wife retired prior to Mr. Williams into a room in the home. It is not known exactly at this time when Mr. Williams retired for the evening, but he went to a different room of the home.
Was this his first attempt at suicide?
What I would say is he's been treated for depression. Outside of that, at this time, we have some concerns about HIPAA protections, so we're a little slightly prohibited in getting into future aspects until the investigation progresses a little further.
You said he was wearing...
I had a question over here first.
Was this his first attempt at suicide?
We're not releasing any information to that effect as the investigation is ongoing. We still have people we want to speak with, and so there is some information we are going to withhold. I heard somebody over here, a male. Yes, ma'am.
What other information about his health did you glean from your investigation and your examination?
With what respect do you mean?
With his prior health before the suicide?
Any other findings from the forensic examination specific to his health will be addressed at the future autopsy. Future press conference.
About heart issues?
That will all come to light at the future press conference. At this time, it's not a factor of what we're going to discuss relevant to what our findings were today.
You said that he was fully clothed. Was he wearing the same clothes that he'd been wearing previously?
What I said was he was clothed. I didn't say fully clothed. I said he was clothed, and that's what we're going to say. He had clothes on, and that's how we're going to address that at this point until the investigation is concluded.
Were the cuts on his wrist recent?
They were acute, superficial. Acute is recent.
Is that what can you say if that's what killed him? And do you have at least an estimate on when he died?
When you say, can you explain what, are you talking about the knife? No, superficial wounds were not the preliminary cause of death. The preliminary cause of death.
And that you just heard Lieutenant Keith Boyd from the Marin County Sheriff's Department talking about the investigation into Robin Williams' death. He said about 11:55 on Monday morning, he got a phone call. The department got a phone call from a very distraught person. That person was a personal assistant who had found Mr. Williams in a room in his house, clothed in a seated position, and it appeared that he had hanged himself with a belt.
We'll have more on KCAL 9 News at noon, as well as CBS.